Good afternoon, brethren. A very happy Sabbath to you. Greetings again from your brethren over there across the pond in St. Pete. Brethren, a few years ago, I came across this particular article online, and its content probably doesn't really pertain to us in one way, but there's a theme behind what I want to tell you about today. I'm going to first read an article which was by Courtney D. Moore. She works at Fox News, and this was delivered about 4 years ago, May 6th of 2021. Fox News, Courtney D. Moore. She's talking about an incident that happened in Europe. It wasn't an ordinary rock. That's what a Belgian farmer learned after he moved a sizable stone that constantly disrupted his tractor's path. But it turned out the rock was actually a marker that served as a divider for France and Belgium, according to the BBC. Moving the stone marker 7.5 feet, which in meters is about 2 1/3 of a meter, reportedly made France smaller and Belgium larger. The shifted border was first noticed by a local who explored the boundary earlier this year. The two areas that are directly affected by the moved stone are the French commune Bossinières-sur-Roc and the Belgian municipality Erkelinnes, which are both rural lands located south of the North Sea. And this is, when Belgium and France meet, France comes out just a little bit, and then you've got the Channel, and then you've got the North Sea right above it. So it's right directly south of that. The mayor of Erkelinnes, the one in Belgium, he shared a Facebook post in 2021 on Monday that showed the stone is currently sitting next to a tree, fallen branches, and a wire fence. And this is a 200-pound stone. 200-pound stone, by the way. As pictured in the photo, the rectangular demarcation stone is engraved with an N. Oh, maybe that one, N. And the numerals 1819. To indicate it marks the Franco-Belgian border. Multiple stones like this were erected between the two countries. France and Belgium officially established the 390-mile border on March 28, 1820, with the Treaty of Cordric. 5 years before the treaty, France's Napoleon Bonaparte led the Battle of Waterloo, a war that targeted such countries as Britain, Prussia, German, and Dutch forces. They eventually defeated Napoleon, and present-day Waterloo, which had been part of France, is now part of Belgium. Exact borders between France, the UK, and the Netherlands were established following the treaty. And Belgium inherited its border when it achieved independence from the Netherlands in 1830. One of the first things that came to my mind, brethren, was the injunction in the Bible. And it's mentioned several times, but the one that came to mind most was Proverbs 22:28. Proverbs 22:28. Do not move the ancient landmark that your fathers have set. That's the first thing I went to. And yet, just over in chapter 23, verse 10, it says pretty much the same thing, but it also adds something else as well. Proverbs 23:10-11. Do not move an ancient landmark or enter the fields of the fatherless, for their Redeemer is strong. He will plead their cause against you. Now, this injunction not to move an ancient landmark, brethren, at least biblically, actually goes back even further. Goes back to somewhere in Deuteronomy 19. In Deuteronomy 19, God told the people of Israel this: you shall not, 19:14, by the way, Deuteronomy 19:14. You shall not move your neighbor's landmark, which the men of old have set, in the inheritance that you will hold in the land that the Lord your God is giving you to possess. I'm not sure if that really brings it out. That's kind of like a stale reading of what God isn't trying to say, what he's trying to bring across. I found this in the NIV. The NIV says this of Deuteronomy 19:14. When you arrive in the land the Lord your God is giving you as your special possession, you must never steal anyone's land by moving the boundary markers your ancestors set up to mark their property. Further along in Deuteronomy, brethren, Deuteronomy 27:17, it says specifically this: cursed be anyone who moves his neighbor's landmark. So this is a serious issue, brethren, not so much that it pertains to this incident between France and Belgium. But, these landmarks refer to stones bearing inscriptions that identified the owner of the property. Moving a neighbor's boundary stone was equivalent to stealing his property. Brethren, why would people move a boundary line? I believe, the main reason is covetousness, to possess somebody else's land. When will we learn not to covet another's land? In Acts 17:26, brethren, Acts 17:26. Let me have a couple of pages here, brother. Acts 17:26 says this. I think the Apostle Paul is on Mars Hill or the Areopagus. Paul is speaking to these new Corinthians. He's saying that God made from one man every nation of mankind to live on all the face of the earth, having determined allotted periods and the boundaries of their dwelling places. This is something God has done. But you know what? When you actually go back to Deuteronomy, and this is further along, I think this might be the Song of Moses, Deuteronomy 32, verse 8. Just want to be kind of correct there, brethren. 32, verse 8. I think it is the Song of Moses. And in verse 8, in the King James Version, brethren, this is what it says, Deuteronomy 32:8. When the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. Now, some translations will say according to the number of God, the sons of God. God foresaw that the children of Israel would have a place in the world outside of the Near or the Middle East. And that have actually turned out to be right. It's part of our teachings in the Church of God to say that, with the United States and or the Great Britain in biblical prophecy, we say that these children, these people are indeed the descendants of Israel. And other Israelite tribes, we say, have settled in northwestern Europe. God took that into consideration. He gave everyone land, every tribe land. And then he apportioned to the Gentiles their land. So no one would ever need to fight or argue over anyone else's land, which is probably what it comes down to. Don't move your neighbor's landmark. Don't shift boundaries. It's not something we want to do. And the main focus of shifting boundaries, brethren, has to do with covetousness. That's the big thing we're going to find out. Similar to the word landmark, brethren, is the word bounds in Deuteronomy 32:8, such as he set the bounds of the people according to the number of children of Israel. The word landmark and the word bounds, they're primarily the same word. One is 11 Hebrews, Strong's number H1366. The other one is H1367. Let's see if I can read this here. Strong's number 1367. It's pronounced Gevula. Gevula is derived from the Hebrew root word gabal, meaning to set bounds or to border. The term Gevula refers to a boundary or border, often used in the context of defining the territorial limits of a land or property. The concepts of boundaries is significant in the biblical narrative, symbolizing God's provision and the inheritance given to his people. And this is from the The Topical Encyclopedia also says this: God's sovereignty in territorial boundaries. The concept of God's sovereignty over territorial boundaries is a recurring theme throughout the Bible, illustrating his supreme authority and control over the nations and their lands. This sovereignty is evident from the earliest narratives in Scripture, where God establishes and delineates the boundaries of nations according to his divine will. However, brethren, boundaries are not just tangible. I'm sorry, brethren. I thought I turned my phone off, but that's okay. Let's continue. I want to go to Exodus 20, verse 17. Exodus 20, verse 17. This, brethren, is where Scripture plainly says, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house." At the very end of that verse, it says, "Nor anything that is thy neighbor's." Covetousness is the main reason why people actually move boundaries. Not like this Belgian farmer moved, the stone simply because it was in the way of his tractor, right? Anyway, the word covet is Hebrews number H2530. The word covet in Exodus 20:17, Strong's number H2500. What I wanted to point out, brethren, concerning this, maybe that was the problem. I wanted to point out, brethren, the usage of the word covet in Hebrew. The word is pronounced chamed in Hebrew, and that is Strong's number H2530. We're talking about the word covet in Exodus 20:17. The Hebrew verb chamed primarily conveys the idea of strong desire or longing, often with the connotation of coveting or lusting after something that is not rightfully one's own. It could also imply taking pleasure or delight in something. But in the context of the Ten Commandments, it is used to prohibit coveting what belongs to one's neighbor, highlighting the moral and ethical boundaries set by God for his people. You think when someone is coveted, when I covet, do I say, wait a minute, whoa, don't go that far? And that's not what you want. I might, brethren. I might, and I should say that actually. But many times when a person's properties and landmarks are moved, it's because people covet, because they go beyond the boundaries of which they should do. Perhaps, brethren, we need some examples. Okay, so let's turn to 1 Kings 21, 1 through 4. 1 Kings 21 through 24. This is a popular narrative. 1 Kings 21, 1 through 4. I'm going to read a couple of sections here from 1 Kings 21. This is the prophecy against Ahab, and or that King Ahab was coveting the property of his neighbor. Verse 1 of 1 Kings 21. And it came to pass after these things that Naboth the Jezreelite had a vineyard, which was in Jezreel, hard by the palace of Ahab, king of Samaria. And Ahab spoke unto Naboth, saying, Give me the vineyard, that I may have it for a garden of herbs, because it is near unto my house. And I will give it to you, I will give to you a better vineyard for it. Or if it seem good to you, I will give thee the worth of it in money, right? This seems practical, right? Ahab needs a vegetable garden, right? His doctor says, you got to eat more vegetables. And so all of a sudden he gets this idea. He's going to buy the land next to him. And Naboth said to Ahab, verse 3, The Lord forbid it me that I should give the inheritance of my fathers unto you. Naboth isn't thinking about how much he can get for the land. He's clearly thinking, this land was an inheritance. I've got boundary markers. I'll pass it on to my family. Verse 4, and so Ahab came into his house heavy and displeased because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him. For For he had said, that is, Naboth said to Ahab, I will not give you the inheritance of my fathers. And he, that is, Ahab, laid down upon his bed and turned away his face and would eat no bread. This thing weighed upon his mind, brethren, right? We know the rest of the story. Jezebel comes in and says, why aren't you eating your vegetables? Well, I can't get land for the vegetable garden, so we'll have to get rid of Naboth. This desire, brethren, led to the murder of Naboth. And then Jezebel bequeaths the land to her husband. And finally, it's too much, right? So God sends Elijah the prophet to speak to Ahab. Verses 22 and 24 of 1 Kings 21. Actually, excuse me, we'll go to 17, 19. 1 Kings 21, 17 through 19. The prophecy of Ahab is urgent and also ugly. 1 Kings 21, 17. And the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite, saying, Arise, go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, which is in Samaria. Behold, he is in the vineyard of Naboth, whither he has gone down to possess it. And you shall speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, have you killed and also taken possession? And you shall also speak unto him, saying, Thus saith the Lord, in the place where dogs licked the blood of Naboth, shall dogs lick thy blood, even thine. It just turned out to be something terribly nasty, brethren. All Ahab wanted, and he seemed to have a good reason. He came up with this reason that he needed a vineyard. He needed somebody else's vineyard. It led to the murder of the man. And now we have this dire prophecy against him and his house. When you go to verses 22 through 24, we read this. This is 1 Kings 21, 22 through 24. And I will make your house, Ahab, like the house of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, and like the house of Baasha, the son of Ahijah, for the provocation wherewith you have provoked me to anger and made Israel to sin. And of Jezebel, your wife, also spoke the Lord, saying, The dog shall eat Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel. Him that dies of Ahab in the city, the dog shall eat, and him that dieth in the field shall the fowls of the air eat as well. Simply because it began with a little bit of covetousness. And yet, brethren, we always have reminders from centuries to centuries, from mid-centuries to mid-centuries, decade by decade. It is covetousness that leads to people moving landmarks. From what I recall, brethren, I know we have a couple of history books here in the congregation. We all kind of understood some of the things that happened during World War II. We look upon Germany as the provocateur of World War II, and we look at the Americans and the Allies as the winners of World War II. However, World War II began with covetousness. It wasn't just a conflict that occurred out of the blue. In 1938, yes, we'll have to go back that far. March of 1938, Germany annexed its neighbor Austria. And because they were both Germans, and that was the excuse, it was known as the Anschluss Österreich, right? So it makes sense. Yeah. This will be good for both of us. So they basically erased the border between Austria and Germany. And then it was the Sudetenland of Czechoslovakia, Bohemia and Moravia as well. Yeah, you can Google this stuff and find it out. So by 1939, March of 1939, Germany had invaded all of Czechoslovakia. The Allies at the time, composed strictly of, I think, France and the United Kingdom, said, that's enough. We've been outdone. We're not going to do that anymore. So when Germany wanted Poland, there was a declaration of war because Germany says, oh, now we need Poland. We need space. And what they really probably wanted was a security arrangement between them and Russia. They wanted a security border. So that was the excuse. Then Denmark fell. They just walked into Denmark and the Dane says, we're not going to resist you. And then the invasion of France, and then France fell, I think, by June 1940. It might be off a year, maybe not. And then they invaded Russia, right? enabling a two-front war for the Germans, if we recall, historically speaking. And yet, brethren, 7 years and a couple of months after 7 years later, after the Anschluss between Austria and Germany, Germany itself was divided into East Germany, West Germany. Portions of the land were taken away. And still to this day, there's a little town, there's a little area, which used to be old-time Prussia, Königsberg, Kaliningrad maybe, Königsberg, which is now still in the hands of the Russians. And all the Germans wanted was just a little bit more space and some security issues. And it wasn't until 1990 that their borders were actually finalized when East Germany and West Germany came together. So I thank you, brethren, that you might historically know that. But it began with covetousness. And 7 years later, Germany is back to its original size. I'd like to conclude, brethren, by just reminding us that covetousness is an ugly business. We need to see this in the world, but we also need to apply it in our lives as well. Psalms 24:1 says this: "The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world, and they that dwell therein." God himself has apportioned land for every tribe on the face of the earth. There's no need to covet another man's property or another nation's land. Hebrews 13:5 says this: "Let your conversation, your behavior, your conduct be without covetousness." Some translations say, "Be without the love of money. Be content with such things as you have, for he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you." And where do you find that phrase in Scripture? I will never leave you or forsake you. You find it in the book of Joshua. As Joshua himself was going into the land of Canaan, God said, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." I was happy. My town was bigger. The Belgian mayor added with a laugh. But the mayor of the French town, Boussinier-sur-Roc, didn't agree. "We should be able to avoid a new border war," the amused mayor said. Local Belgian authorities plan to contact the farmer. Now, this was 2021. Hopefully they have by now. Things do take time in Europe, They plan to contact the farmer to ask him to return the stone to its original location. If that does not happen, the case could end up at the Belgian Foreign Ministry, which would have to summon a Franco-Belgian border commission dormant since 1930. Not even in World War II was the border between France and Belgium disturbed. That's very interesting. The farmer could also face criminal charges if he failed to comply. If he shows goodwill, he won't have a problem. "We will settle this matter amicably," he told the Belgian news website. Again, brethren, we should look at Scripture. We can also look at some historical significance that covetousness doesn't pay. May you have a pleasant Sabbath afternoon.